Okay.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Let me just get rid of that. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for spending your lunch break or your coffee break or whatever break it is with us at the CCI Pedagogy Hacks series. I'm going to be talking with you today about something that anyone who knows me knows I'm particularly passionate about, and I hope you'll find it interesting as well, and have a bunch of questions at the end. So I'm going to start. Oops, sorry. I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we'll get started. Okay. If you can't see it, Alex, let me know, okay? All right, so what I'm going to be talking with you about today is reading course texts using social annotation platforms. I first got introduced to social annotation just after COVID hit in 2020. I was teaching at a different institution, and I was charged with designing and then teaching in that summer an introduction to qualitative research. And I remember thinking as I was designing the course that one of the most important things for me at that time, knowing what I knew about the students' anxiety, and everyone was scared, if we're being honest, and everyone was feeling isolated. And so one of my main motivations in designing that course was to find as many different aspects of the course that I could make communal as possible, the ways to bring us together so that we feel like we are not as isolated as we were. And so a colleague of mine suggested I look into social annotation. I'd never heard of it before. And at that time, 2 years ago, I went down that rabbit hole, and I've been falling down that rabbit hole ever since. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So we start with the understanding that discussion-based courses or discussion-based experiences are crucially central in higher education, and that these types of discussion-based experiences are more times than not based on text readings that we have students do prior to the class. So if we think about how we read as the adults in the room, let's say. So I know I'm particularly old school. I like to hold it in my hand, but even if you do it on an iPad or on your laptop, so we read, and we tend to highlight things of interest. We take notes. I know I take notes in the margin. I'll write down questions that I have regarding the text or questions I want to ask the students later. I'll often also make notes of other scholarly works or videos or something else that I have knowledge of that connects to what I'm reading. So like I'm filling up the margins all over, and it's a very active engagement that I have when I'm reading texts. If we then start thinking about our students' reading habits, so that's when the problem arises, I think, because we tend to assign textual readings to our students for them to do in isolation. And that's where we hit the problem, because all of those different ways of being actively engaged in the act of reading and critically engaged, we can't see that anymore. We're hoping that our students have those types of engagements, but what we tend, if we're being honest, what we tend to need to know the most is, did they even read the articles before they get to our classes? And so oftentimes we'll create a worksheet in conjunction with the reading and ask the students to do it, summarize main points or list the chief topics or note main takeaways that they had. And students find these tedious, and if we're being honest with ourselves, we find them tedious as well. It's basically just showing us, number one, students have read the article or the materials, and number two, they can regurgitate what we want them to know from that text that they've read. So this problem, in my mind, is compounded by the fact that if we look into the contemporary discourses of literacy, so scholars, therefore, over a decade already, have argued that in the 21st century digital environment, literacy is now beyond the words on the page. Reading is not just reading words off of a page, but reading is now a multimodal and social semiotic process. So taking that in account with what we were talking about before about how we assign readings, so we're working in a kind of counterproductive manner with students when we talk about reading text for our courses. The question then becomes, how can social annotation solve this problem? How does it dovetail with these new understandings of contemporary discourses of literacy? So I'm going to be sharing with you today my work that I used with the platform hypothesis. The reason I chose this one is because I've been using it for the last 2 years. SUNY Central actually had a pilot program for us to test this out in our courses, and I was among a small number of professors that actually hopped on that pilot. I was very excited about it. So I'm going to be sharing that with you. At my prior institution, I used a different platform. If we have time at the end, I'll pull that one up as well. So for now, I'm going to exit this, and I'm going to take you over to one of my Moodle course sites. Okay, so this is the Moodle page of one of my courses. This is the first week of classes. And what you see down here is there's 2 readings that I'm assigning to them to read for next week. There's a little hypothesis icon there. The reason the hypothesis icon is showing up is, again, because this is part of a pilot. If we didn't have hypothesis integrated, or if you're using a different social annotation platform, then you can simply use the external tools function on the LMS and make a link that your students can then very easily click on, and it will take them to the article. So when we click on this, it takes us here. Oops, sorry. Okay, it takes us here. This is the article that the students see. For the time being, don't pay attention to what you see over there. This is the way the article is laid out. Also, articles, all of these platforms make it very easy to upload your articles. You just need to be storing them somewhere on the web. I have them usually in my Google Drive. If for some reason the formatting of the text that you want to upload isn't compatible with annotation, all of these platforms have tools that are easy to use where you can reformat them so that they are annotation compatible. So I want to show you how it works. You can see that there's yellow throughout this. This is the student's annotation. So let's say I'm a student and I'm interested in talking about this phrase, the elephant in the room. When I highlight it, it offers me the option to annotate, and I instantly am offered a box where I can now put my comment, which is yes, okay? Other things that I can do besides text, I can put in a hyperlink to anywhere on the web. I can embed images, pictures, memes, whatever. As the teacher also, if you want to use tags, kind of like hashtags in Twitter, if there's certain concepts that you want to make sure that the students are keeping in mind as they read, you can make a list of tags that the students then, as they annotate, they can post a hashtag. This particular annotation of mine, I'm really thinking about this concept. And then you as the teacher can go through and see how these different concepts are being juggled around with the students. So this was my annotation. I push post, and there it is. What you're seeing here is all of the different annotations that the students, I had 10 students in this course, all the different annotations that they made. I asked the students to not only highlight and annotate, but to make comments, pose questions to their peers, and then to respond every week to at least 2 or 3 of their peers' comments. And so you'll see that here there's 5 replies to this one, 2 replies to this one. Replying is really easy. All the student has to do is click on that, and then in response to the yes, I'm going to reply no. And this is how the annotation gets set up. When they first open it, so all they'll see is one white box at the top, which is my prompt. And this is one of the things that makes me most excited about using social annotation, because now I can see, did the students read the article in advance? Are they understanding it? I can just browse through their annotations and I know how are they comprehending it? What issues are they having? What questions do they still have beyond did they actually read it? So now the weekly prompt that I can construct can go much deeper. I tend to try to construct weekly prompts that ask them to take their understanding of the text and synthesize it with personal experience, prior knowledge. And so, for example, in this article, which is about how, don't laugh, how music educators tend to place impediments to all kids learning music in school. So my prompt was, this article was written 10 years ago. Do you think this elephant is still in our collective room? Why or why not? Are there other baby elephants hanging around in our room too, do you think? So it's asking the students to take their understanding, synthesize it with their own opinions, and then they read each other's and comment on them as well. So it creates a really dynamic type of interaction. There was one thing I forgot to, oh no, I didn't forget to show you that. Okay, let me show you one other one, just so we can focus a little bit on the multimodal aspects of these platforms. So this is an article we read just last week in one of my courses, which has to do with multimodality. The article presents a model for multimodal emergent pedagogy as opposed to sequential linear pedagogy. And so what I asked students to do for the prompt was to design their own model of this type of emergent pedagogy. And this is where the multimodality makes a really powerful impact on the students' reading. So if we click on this, hopefully it'll open up. So this is one model that, this is a model that this student came up with. She used the platform of Miro, and she's talking about multimodality. She's using a multimodal platform to talk about multimodality. This is another example of something that one of the other students came up with, and we go back here. So now all of these different multimodal types of responses can be viewed by all the other students, and the way that this expands the scope and the depths of this course is, I find it absolutely astounding. So that's all very exciting to me. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint, and I'm just going to check the time, make sure I still, okay, good. So I wanted to show you this. I found very interesting. This is data that Hypothesis supplied the professors who were doing the pilot with. This shows just one text and the generative and autonomous conversations that the students generated themselves. In the middle, you see that was my prompt that I put up that they saw first thing, and then all the students responded to it. But then there's 6 other autonomous conversations that the students themselves engaged in based around the text and things they were thinking about and things that the text made them think about. So takeaways, these are my personal takeaways, things I've discovered just from using these platforms. So social annotation makes reading active for our students, and it engages them in a critical fashion. It creates a sense of community beyond the classroom. It definitely increases motivation and engagement and comprehension because it's rooted in the idea of social media, which is something that's so natural to the students that we're working with. I, as the professor, am able to witness the students' thought processes, the questions that they have, their understandings, and the things that they are interested in that have grown out of the text that I've supplied them with. And as a result, and this was a super exciting surprise for me, I'm able to take those questions and interests and integrate them into the topics that I discuss in the subsequent class. And what that does is it completely reorients the student-teacher dynamic, because now I'm not the only one deciding this is what's important to get out of this text, but the students themselves are pulling out things that are essentially, that they find essentially important, that they want to talk about as well. And bottom line, it beautifully dovetails with contemporary discourses of literacy in that it makes reading a multimodal and social experience. On a very basic academic level, using social annotation, your students learn to annotate and summarize and paraphrase. They have an opportunity to do peer-to-peer review. And for those of you who like using gradebooks and assignment functions online, I don't personally use these when I use social annotation, but in all of these platforms, there are gradebook functions and assignment functions. You can turn it into like a mini course if you'd like to. Like I said, and I'm just looking at my time. Okay, I'm not gonna in the question and answer. If you'd like me to pull up Perusal, which is one that I used at my previous institution, which basically works and looks pretty much like Hypothesis does, and it's free. I'm happy to talk about that. But for now, let's see if anyone has any questions. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oh, more faces.
You're still sharing. There we go.
No, I'm not. Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So
I was just wondering, when did the Hypothesis, did they have the pilot end? When did that happen?
it actually ended last summer,
Yeah.
but for some reason, and I'm not talking about it, so don't you talk about it either. I still have access.
Okay,
I have had access all year, and the only person who knows is Steve Canning, because I asked him, hey, do you still have Hypothesis? And he said no.
So if it's not broke.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder, is this going to be compatible with Brightspace?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I assume if we do get this tool available to us, then yes, it would be available. I'm fairly sure that it would be available with Brightspace. And actually, while doing this presentation, I realized that even if we didn't have any dedicated tool, there are a lot of ways that we can do this using Word online, using OneNote. And so for those that are going to be interested in it and want to do it a slightly different way, the core feature of bringing in an article and then commenting on it, annotating it, those features are available in Word and in OneNote. So we have other tools if we don't get a dedicated tool to do that.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, just to follow up, could you do this like in smaller groups? I'm just thinking of like a class of like, if I've got 30 and I have them working in groups already, could I have them, instead of like all 30 working on one article, could I have, groups of 5 or something, or 6?
I'm going to pull up, let me just pull something up to try and answer that question. In Perusal, you can, yes, so in Perusal, sorry, I'm going to share my screen again so you can see. And if it's true in Perusal, I would imagine that it's true in Hypothesis as well. I've just never checked, but in Perusal, you can create study groups. Okay. This was my introduction to qualitative research. I have all the articles here. You have your gradebook. You can group students into sections. I'm going to say I assume that the same is true of, because again, pretty much mirrors all of the social annotation platforms that I've looked at, and it's become like an obsession with me. They all tend to have this pretty much the same format, so I couldn't tell you how you do it, but yes, it is possible. And I also I do know that, because I checked into Brightspace, and Hypothesis does integrate into Brightspace, but like Alex said, it's a question of, the reason the pilot ended is because SUNY decided that we didn't have the money to buy it, which is why there are other free options. And yes, there are in Office 365, and there are other free options if you like a different layout.
Yeah, and it sounds like the the free ones, like you said, you could make a link or you could do something, if it's
Yeah.
free, then people could have an account or something like that.
Yeah, it's very, very easy to use. When I was using Perusall with my Intro to Qual course, it was very easy to use. I put a link into the LMS we were using. What we're using, I think we're using Blackboard, and I just put a link in there, and the students had to register, which they don't have to do if it's linked to the LMS itself. But they had to register, and then they just click on the text every week that they had to read.
Amanda had a comment. She said she sees this as an improvement over just a standard forum discussion, and she wonders if do you ever find that students are hesitant to be the first person to comment?
No, that's the quick answer is no. What I've found is that students, you have those students who, they always try and get their work done as quickly as possible. They're always going to be the ones who annotate first. You've got those students who wait till the night before the class to do their homework. They're the ones that are going to put up the annotation last. So I haven't found that. What I have found, and I'm being completely honest, is that if I do not tie it to their final grade, like if I don't make it explicit that I'm going to look at all of their activity in Hypothesis or on this annotation platform, and I'm going to factor that into their final grade, it ends up being very difficult to get them to consistently go and do this type of work. That I think is part of a broader conversation about grades and higher education and that whole big mess. So I don't imagine I can solve it on my own as one professor. The first time I used Hypothesis, I did not do that. And what I saw was the first couple of weeks, they were so gung-ho, they were so excited, they loved it. I mean, the students love being able to use social media, and especially in this way. They were really gung-ho for like the first 3-4 weeks, and little by little it started to peter out as other obligations and other stresses came in. And so from that point on, I just say, listen, I'm going to factor it into your final grade. So make sure you put up something, make sure you read your friends' comments, make sure you reply to something, show me that you're engaged in what's happening.
Judy, how do you bring in an article into Hypothesis or Perusal? Is it, if there's a web article, is there a way that brings in that web article, or what are the ways that you bring in the content into the tool itself, the platform itself?
So with Hypothesis, because it's integrated into our LMS, so when I use the tool at the bottom to upload a file, it asks me if I want to use an external link, and one of those external links that's offered to me is Hypothesis. So it saves, like, I don't even have to do anything. It offers me that option as I go. But in order for that to get tossed onto the Hypothesis platform, I have to have it housed somewhere on the web. So I keep mine in a Google Drive, and then I just link that Google Drive, that specific link in the Google Drive to Hypothesis. With Perusal, it's even easier. With Perusal, I did not have to be storing stuff anywhere on the web. I just uploaded them directly from my computer, and then they live on Perusal.
And these files are PDF files?
Yes, they have to be PDF. The one problem that I found, and I know I'm going to get this wrong because I learned how to circumvent it really quickly, and then you drop information, you don't have room in your brain for other information. But I think there's something called OER or OCR, a particular format that's needed for it to be compatible with annotation. So some of my PDFs were not compatible, and Hypothesis let me know right away, and they said, here, go do this, upload it to here, we'll transform it for you, and then you can upload it again. So
yeah, so that's having a PDF that's just an image of text versus actual text. That's the difference.
Right.
So the OCR converts it into text.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all of it was super easy. even the workarounds, and even when I had to, redo something. The platforms that I have explored make it very easy to upload your documents or link to your documents wherever they are living on the web. It's really, really very easy platforms to use for ourselves and for our students. Super non-complicated tech that does so much. So usually it's the other way around. You have super complicated tech that does one thing, but here it's like really simple, does a lot. Any other questions? I see there's a timer that's telling me we've got 3 minutes left in this meeting or something. Does it just like explode like Mission Impossible when the time is up?
Maybe. I don't have any other questions, but thanks for taking the time to put this together. It's really neat.
Well, if any of you are interested in like trying to put something like this together in one of your courses, I'd be more than happy to I'll come over to you wherever you are, and we'll sit and we'll see how it could work, and I'll help walk you through it. And like I said, this is one of my newfound passions. Thank you, COVID, for tossing me in here. So just reach out to me, and I'd be happy to come and. Yay, Amanda's going to use Perusal. Excellent. If you need any help or anything, let me know, Amanda. Great. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your break with us.
Thanks, Judy.